AmandaLand, AmandaLand, AmandaLand. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Views from AmandaLand. I was trying to decide if I wanted to wear red lipstick or not. Here we are. And this is going to be a fun show. This is going to be a fun show because today's show is all about the film Sinners. That is what today's show is dedicated to, from top to bottom. So thank you for joining us on the right side of history, waking up on the right side of history, and also knowing that this is the news and truths by any joke necessary. So before we even go any further, I want to let you know that I don't believe that this episode, I don't believe that the movie Sinners really has spoilers. I don't think that it should be even seen in that mindset, because I think it's really deeper than just going to see a film for entertainment. And so because of that, I do think that anybody here who hasn't seen the film, I hope that you don't leave, because I really feel like ultimately, yes, it's a thriller, it's suspense, but you will get the most out of it knowing what you're going to see, knowing what you're looking for. Because I'm seeing people say things like, "Oh, is this a horror movie? Is this a vampire movie? Oh, I don't like the occult, etc." And I just feel that's like a super duper just unfair, very limiting take on what this film truly represents. So I urge you to stick around so that you don't make that mistake and go in there and play yourself. Okay? Now, I ain't gonna say names, but somebody I know very well went in there and played themselves. And they didn't know what they were kind of watching. And so they abandoned it. But they abandoned it too soon. Okay? They abandoned it too soon. So we're going to be talking about Sinners today, and the importance of this film, why I consider this to be easily one of the greatest films of the last 10 years. And what, in my opinion, Ryan Coogler was attempting to say with this film. And I think that it can be very easily misinterpreted. And I think it can be very easily kind of like diminished, oversimplified, I should say. And I don't want that to happen. And so I have only seen this movie one time. I saw it yesterday. I will only be talking about the film from a narrative point of view. So yes, this film can definitely be discussed from a cinematic point of view, as it is a film and the cinematography is incredible. So there is a technical aspect of this film that should absolutely be greatly explored and discussed and academied. This conversation is going to be about the narrative elements and the social justice, as well as the commentary that is interwoven into the storytelling. So that is the framework of this conversation. And I don't want anyone to feel like, well, you forgot also, because again, I saw the movie one time. So this is not a completely comprehensive, exhaustive conversation. There will be so much that people can add to this. I hope that this conversation will continue to expound, that this conversation will be a starter, not an ender for people. I hope that it expands people's take and expands people's interest in discussing the film. I'm going to have to see it again because, again, I was watching the movie as entertainment. And so I've seen people say things like they hope they do a prequel on the twins' backstory. I hope that, so I saw someone say, I hope that they make this into like a universe. And I want to just point out that in order for that to be done, it really is imperative, and I trust Coogler with this completely, but it really is imperative that it is grounded in the preservation and amplification of the unique existence of the Black person in the United States. I went into this film with a recent kind of unsettledness about my own work in that regard, my own dedication to the preservation of that identity. And in my public sales announcement, I will share with you, what I came out of that with. I want to thank everybody who has been ordering the Love is a Mother items that I've created. This is the Love is a Mother pin, and it is only available until midnight tonight. These are the cards. I'm very proud of them. They come with assorted envelopes. They come with the sticker sheets. It really is beautifully packaged. I'm incredibly proud of the work that I've done here. And know that when you are purchasing from AmandaLand Exports, that you are supporting the independent art that I create that is rooted deeply to the continued independent protection and preservation of the Black narrative, the Black voice, the Black experience. I'm going to play this Topper commercial, and then we're going to get into it. So I am deeply, deeply excited about today's episode. And I really honestly just can't wait to share, because it's so rare. It's so rare that we get this level of art these days. I was a model, then an actress. Now I got the Topper Shank Show. Got the Topper Shank Show. Strong, black, beautiful woman. Topper Shank Show. Yeah. What y'all niggas watching? Topper Shanks. Mother. Madre. Mami. Umi. Mame. Oma. What's up, Ma? It's time for another edition of Temptress Kings! And as you can see, we have got something special for you. Now, for those who don't know, Temptress Kings is a little show where I, Topper Shanks, who was a model, then an actress, and now is the host of the Topper Shanks Show, invite all of my friends in to see the beautiful works of the brilliant, the magnanimous Ms. Amanda Seales. And this month,
Listen, people, she has outdone herself. The love is a mother drop, isn't it? Isn't it? Love is a mother. No, that's a double entendre because we're talking about mothers. That's right. You heard the lyricism in the intro, and here we are seeing that lyricism transformed into artistry with a set of 5 blank greeting cards in the work of Amanda Seales. We have watercolor, we have pen work, we have acrylic work, we have marker, we have graphics. Oh my goodness! Versatility, versatility, versatility. Versatile is what we're talking about. We also, of course, have the Love is a Mother pin. And this pin is so incredibly beautiful. Look at the delicate lines. Look at the detail. Look at the beauty of the actual image. The brown on brown, sinuous lines representing the wholeness of love for all the mothers. Along with this is, of course, a signed bookmark. In these days and times, you better be reading. Especially to the children. For all the mothers out there of children, you better be reading. Yeah, you better be educating. You know, they say that the United States, as an average, reads on an 8th grade reading level. That's no good. Maybe that's why we're not protesting or resisting the way we should. Lean into your creative heart and give a mother you know a gift of a Mother's Day card created by Ms. Amanda Seales with the Love is a Mother gift card set. Now, you are in for a treat. In honor of Miss Seales' mother, who loves a deal, this month at AmandaLand Exports, you can either get the pin and signed bookmark, or you can get the 5-card gift card set that comes with the sticker sheet, or you can get a bonus bundle combining the gift cards, and the bookmark, and the pin, and the sticker sheet, all for $10 off. I know! That's a mother of a deal if I say so. Mama, you know I love you. You know, Topher Shanks was a model, then an actress, and now I've got the Topher Shanks show. And though I never had time to mother a child of my own, I feel like you all are my children. And I suckle you at my breast every day. Go. So. Oh. The cards have tumbled. The cards have tumbled.
So it's the last day to order Love is a Mother at AmandaLand Exports. So please go over there and check it out. If you're just joining us, welcome to Views from AmandaLand, your news and truths by any joke necessary. Today, we are focusing our entire episode, yes, the whole thing, on the film Sinners by Ryan Coogler. Yes, that is what's happening today, and I could not be happier. The reason why we're doing this is also because I went to see the movie Sinners, and I want to say that I literally didn't know anything about the movie. Like, I didn't go to see Sinners knowing that it was going to feature vampires. I didn't go see Sinners with the mindset of, okay, this is going to be about, I didn't even know it was going to be about Black people. I mean, I know it's Coogler, so like the odds are high, but I just went because, to be perfectly honest, I went because Reese was like, you need to go see Sinners. So Reese, all the way across the pond, put me on to this film. And I was just so kind of like out of touch from what was going on that I had missed this movie even coming into existence. And so I was like, okay, then I find out it's Coogler, it's Michael B. He's playing twins. So that already, I know that that's like a double fineness, but it's also, for me, acting wise, it's like, oh, as somebody who plays Chopra and myself, like against each other, I know the difficulty of playing two roles. And then I saw this video on Instagram of Ryan Coogler talking about why he shot the film on different types of film, which choices he made in terms of IMAX, in terms of the next level of IMAX, and what you as a viewer should try to do to see the movie in its like most ideal, which is to see it on like the biggest IMAX possible. So he was breaking down, yes, Reese, he was breaking down aspect ratio as well. And for those of you all who are here saying, oh, I'm gonna leave, I want to see the movie without seeing this breakdown, I implore you to stick around. I know that you may want to like be surprised by the movie. I personally feel like I actually would have liked to go into the movie with more insight, because I now have to go see it again to do a whole other level of watching. And I feel like if I had gone in with a bit more attentiveness, then I would have been able to even gain more from the movie. I don't believe that this is a film to simply watch for entertainment purposes. I genuinely feel like that is doing it a disservice. I really honestly feel like when I'm seeing the marketing and they're calling it a thriller and a vampire movie and horror, I know why they doing that. But now that I've seen it, I'm like, I feel like that's a disservice. Yes, Isabel, I literally was in there. I had to turn my screen down so that I could take notes, because I was like, I absolutely need to remember what I'm saying here, because in the middle of it, I realized, oh, I got to go to the AmandaLanders with this. I got to go to the AmandaLanders with this. Okay. So I'm coming to you, AmandaLanders, with this. Now, I do want to shout out Coogler real quick, because the reason he was able to even make this film is because of his success. And that's an irony that's caught up in this film. He was able to be free enough to make this film because of the level of success that he has achieved within the capitalist framework. And he had a very, very unique deal. One, he had final cut. This is very rare. This is not something that is often, I mean, it's like Scorsese gets final cut. And even that is like, kind of, sort of, maybe sometimes. But he was able to get final cut. Now, this script went into the studio circulation. He wrote the script. It went into studio circulation in 2023. 2023, it went into studio circulation, and, studios wanted to snap it up because it was not only going to be written by him, it was also going to be directed by him. And we know that because of the Black Panther success, like, Coogler is that dude. However, the deal that he was demanding was a very high stakes deal. I mean, a very high level quality deal. He wanted $90 million. And he also wanted to own the film after 25 years, that it would that the rights of the film would revert back to his family. And for many studios, that was a no-go. They were like, nah, we're not going to do it. But he finally found a studio that was like, all right, fine. And this is an unprecedented deal, where they're making like these large sweeping statements like, is this the end of studios? As if that would be a bad thing. But ultimately, I want to just congratulate Coogler for really stepping out on this, because what happens when someone does this is they set precedent. And for this precedent to be set by a Black creative is incredibly impactful. Okay? Because it really busts it wide open. Bust it, baby. Okay? It busts it wide open. So shout out to Coogler, because I tell you, as somebody who comes from that business and understands, this is not to be overlooked. This is not to be underrepresented. And it really is incredible. Now, again, I want to remind you, today, we are going to be talking about this film from a narrative analysis. So you're not going to get, screen cinematography analysis. That's not what's happening today. So I don't even want to see one comment like, well, you left out, because also this is not a comprehensive. All right. I'm doing my best to give y'all real top line stuff, and also the stuff that I remembered, because again, I only saw it one time. But I hope that in the comments, wherever I left out, you guys will fill in the blanks. You will add, because I know that here at the Seal Squad, you guys are such intellectuals. You guys are so meticulous with your knowledge. And I really hope that you will be as generous with your information as Coogler was with this film. So let's get into it and talk about Sinners. Now, let me start by saying that we're not, so I know that normally we would do roll call word of the day. This is a different kind of episode. So let's just get into it. So when I went to see this movie on a blank slate, I had no idea what I was going to watch. However, I did say, oh, you know what I forgot to add? That he also gets first dollar. And first dollar means that he would be making the first dollar of the movie's, like he would be making $1 off of the first money that the movie made, versus waiting for the studio to recoup before he started to make money. Wanted to point that out. Forgot to say that. Okay. When I went to see the movie, I went completely clean slate. I had absolutely no frame of reference. And what I really wanted to do was just see what was coming. And immediately I was taken by the landscape and by the music and by the setting. So we're going to get into that. But I first want to start you off with what my thesis is for what this film's message is. Okay. Now, I know that we're going to jump a little bit around, but stick with me. In his 1967 book, Where Do We Go From Here? Community or Chaos? The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King spoke about this. He said, "We have fought hard and long for integration, as I believe we should have. And I know that we will win. But I've come to believe we're integrating into a burning house. I'm afraid that America may be losing what moral vision she may have had. And I'm afraid that even as we integrate, we are walking into a place that does not understand that this nation needs to be deeply concerned with the plight of the poor and disenfranchised. Until we commit ourselves to ensuring that the underclass is given justice and opportunity, we will continue to perpetuate the anger and violence that tears at the soul of this nation. My thesis is that this masterpiece, Sinners, is a cinematic depiction of that emulsion into the burning house through symbolism and story, using Black music as the vessel. Let's begin. So let's start. For the record, by the way, if you're just joining us, remember this is Views from AmandaLand. You can check us out Monday through Wednesday, 10 a.m. Eastern, right here at Amanda Seals TV. Remember to replay the episode. Remember to subscribe, comment, and like. Subscribe, comment, and like. Subscribe, comment, and like. And please share this with others, because that is a very important part of making this content continuously available and expanding minds. All right. So let's start with setting. When we're talking about setting, actually, you know what? Before we even get to that, let's just talk about film as an art form. This is a story that could be told in a novel. This is a story that could be told in a scripted podcast. However, I would like to talk about first why film was the medium for this and why it was a great medium for this. Now, for me, I think film, just as an art form, has a unique ability to immerse the viewer in perspectives that they don't have for themselves, literally because it's using lens, right? But also because of the technological capabilities that are not necessarily available in plays. Why would you all say that film is a unique art form, and what do you feel like the art form of film can do differently than, let's say, novel or music or visual art, etc.? While you guys are waiting to write this down, I will say that one of the things I think film has a unique capability to do is engage various senses simultaneously to tell a story. And so it's not only engaging like your sight and ear, but it also manages to engage texture, even though you're not physically touching it. It also manages to engage smell, even if you're not physically smelling, because the images on the screen, when done correctly, are so palpable that it is engaging all of these senses. All right. So Miriam says it brings people together. Brandon McGrath says it captures, motivates, and inspires through audible and visual. Sarah Tibbs says it's immersion therapy. And Brandon seconded that emotion. Jessica says, film integrates story and visual art and music into a montage that hits all the senses into a powerful way. Reese Roberts says, yep, and film reflects the human story, epic and intimate, in hopes of touching the connective tissue of human beings, and therefore bringing people together, both in a literal sense, and all communal way. I don't know why somebody is bringing up something other than the movie Sinners right now and has the nerve to say, I know this is off topic. Stay on topic. Sarah adds, a film can make an emotional impact in a short time. Celine adds, unlike novels, the music and score can heighten a scene. Fatima adds, film can combine storytelling with visually experiencing a perspective that we don't typically hold. And Kia closes us out by saying, it gives a visual manifestation to events and experiences that we may not have directly seen ourselves. I agree with all of these. I think what we are seeing with the advancement of technology as well is filmmakers being able to just really delve into themes and symbols in ways that they may not have been able to before. And we're going to talk about how that comes to light within this actual film. The use of symbol, the use of, certain images that in the past would not have been able to be achieved. So let's talk about setting, okay? What is setting? I know for some people, they think of setting and they may just think, okay, setting is like the time and place where something happens. But setting has more to that, okay? Because setting is not just the physical location of where a story takes place. It's not simply the time period or the time of day. It's also the vibe, okay? It's also the freaking vibe. But let's talk about the setting of this film. So the movie takes place in Mississippi, in the Mississippi Delta in 1932. What's happening during 1932? Anybody? What's happening during 1932 in the United States? 1932 in the United States got a lot going on, okay? 1932, of course, is Jim Crow. So yes, Isabel, Jim Crow is present. We learned that immediately watching the film. Immediately, we know that Jim Crow is present. We are also in the midst of the Great Depression. That is correct. Remember, we're in Mississippi. So let's talk also about what is happening in specifically Mississippi. Okay. What's also happening specifically in Mississippi, aside from Jim Crow and the Great Depression. In general, we also know that prohibition is taking place. Prohibition is, of course, the outlaw of alcohol. And yes, Isabel, the KKK. All right? The KKK. And thank you, Black Town Hall. Big sharecropping. Big sharecropping. And yes, Leah Jackson, lynching. And one more. We're missing one more thing that is happening down south. Not one more, but we're missing something that's also happening down south during this time. And I'm just going to give it to us. Chain gangs. All right. We're seeing chain gangs. We are seeing Black people just incarcerated for the smallest of offenses. And it is once again continuing free labor because of the 13th Amendment. So we're seeing all of this together. And we also, going back to big sharecropping, we are continuously seeing labor being used because sharecropping is the act of leasing land to croppers, to farmers. And then what would happen is they would raise the rent. Okay? They would raise the rent. And now these sharecroppers would be indebted to their landlords. And by being indebted to their landlords, they would now have to continue doing the work that they're doing, but at levels that are beyond their real capabilities. And so what ends up happening, in order for them to continue not being arrested or lynched, they would now be indebted to the land, and they are basically attached to the land and they can't get out of it. Sometimes what would happen is, because this landlord owns this land, they would literally just lie and say, oh, this person, yeah, these people, they're stealing from me. So now we're going to lynch them, so that they could then take the land and charge someone else a higher price. This is the type of thing that's happening. Someone asked, what are chain gangs? Chain gangs were groups of men who were leased out from the prison to do labor. And this is still in existence. It's also called convict leasing. So this is still in existence. This still happens down in the South, where, I mean, it happens everywhere, just in different forms. But basically, this is the act of leasing out prisoners to private companies to do work. Okay. Some other things that were taking place during 1932, Hamid said the advent of redlining and gentrification. And someone else said also Angola prison. Now, sharecropping is not the same as indentured servants, because indentured servants are essentially a servant that is working to be able to buy their own freedom. So they are indentured, meaning that their individuality is tied to the person in language. And of course, we know that there would be shady people who would be like, nah, you can't get for yourself free. That being said, they were still considered at a higher place in society than slaves, because they were Irish. And even though they weren't considered white, they were still not Black. And Black people were not even considered a part of the society. We were not considered human. We were not considered as elements of the, body being governed, except for being used to enhance the power of the slavers in the South via the Electoral College and the 3/5 human rule. So this is the framework of Mississippi 1932, where the film begins. Now, the film opens with a quick historical reference to music that is able to call across the realms to awaken and connect with the ancestors. And it speaks of this within the Native American tradition. It speaks of this within the Irish tradition, and it speaks of this within the West African tradition. And it also speaks of this as, though being powerful and supernatural to raising us to the highest realms of the heavens, it also opens doors that allow the deepest elements of hell and evil to come in. I want you to remember that. Put a pin in that. Cut to a young man driving down a dirt road, pulling up in a vehicle. So immediately we see an image of a dirt road juxtaposed with access. To have a vehicle at that time in that place is not necessarily something everybody can attain. We also see that this particular vehicle is high quality. Okay. So we are immediately given a juxtaposition of poor and privilege. Now, someone, by the way, said, Victoria Albright said, I never understood how you could call someone non-human yet be interested sexually. It should be known that the white people of the colonial era, etc., were constantly involved in bestiality. It has been said that, that Christopher Columbus, died by himself in shame because he was known for smashing the donkeys. So that is not in any way like confusing or confounding for them. Now, after he pulls up, the young man goes into a church where we see Black folks seated, all dressed in white. He, in contrast, is backlit as a dark image of struggle, okay? Of a struggle. Saul Williams plays his father, the preacher, and he comes forward, and his father is begging him as he's holding the top of a guitar. His father begs him, are you now going to let go of that guitar and this sinner music? You keep going over there with these sinners. You're going to welcome in the devil. You're going to welcome in the devil. You're going to welcome in the devil. And then we cut to one day earlier. And then we cut to one day earlier. We meet the main characters, Smoke and Stack. Smoke and Stack are the twins that are played by Michael B. Jordan. And it is acknowledged very quickly their well, I'll talk more about what they represent later, but it acknowledged very quickly that they are coming back from the, what's it called? From Chicago. Okay. That they're coming home. And, you know, we're witnessing them coming home. And so this brings us to the next level, next element of community that I want to point out that I feel like Coogler was making very clear. He was establishing community. Okay? He was establishing community. And what I think is really incredible about this is that I don't feel like a lot of people really get to see Black community within the context of the Mississippi that you can leave, but I mean, it's like nothing I'm telling you is going to in any way unenhance what you're going to see on the screen. Like, I'm not like, nothing I'm telling you is like, what's the word I'm saying? Like, I don't feel, again, I'm going to say this one more time. I don't feel like this is a movie where you should be surprised. I feel like ultimately you are witnessing a string of elements and symbolism, etc., that were you presented with ahead of time, you'd be able to take in even deeper. So, you know, do your thing. So when we see Blackness in this time period, oftentimes I am frustrated because I feel like what we're seeing all the time is sadness. And what I really liked about the movie Ray was that when they showed Ray where he was from, I think Ray is also from Mississippi in the South, it was very much showing and depicting community and the difficulties within community, right? Because even if you're in community, there's going to be people being funny style, but it still was incredibly close knit and there was joy. And there was joy. And that to me is something that Black people have always somehow managed to retain, even in the midst of the terror and the evil. And when I see certain like Black trauma thrillers, I get frustrated because I feel like they're missing the joy. They're extricating the trauma, leaving out the full context. So I really loved that in creating setting here in this film, we saw community. We saw community in a number of different ways. Now, people who have seen the film, can you give me some examples of how community was showing up? Can you give me some examples? I'm going to give you another one. There's a Chinese-run store. We have had Asian folks running stores in our communities for a very, very, very long time. A lot of people may not know that the early Chinese settlers in the Mississippi Delta were laborers that were recruited by cotton planters to supplement the work that Black folks were doing post-Reconstruction, because now they didn't have slaves. So they brought in the Asians. Okay? And yes, Veronica Cheney, they had 2 stores. So they brought in the Asians, and they were peasants and merchants, apparently from the Zhejiang region of the Guangdong province in southern China. And this juxtaposition I found to be really important. And it's these types of nuances that make Coogler such a genius, because he's identifying on screen a cohesion, because the Asians in this film, there is no animosity between the Asians and the Black folks. There's immediate interaction. And the interaction is done from a space of equal respect. I also appreciated that the woman was the one doing the negotiating. I loved this depiction, particularly as Coogler is from the Bay, where there has been an incredible amount of Asian and Black solidarity in their resistance work. And I know that people are like, but, Yes, there are always going to be folks that are, reaching for white supremacy. There are always going to be folks that are considering themselves the model minority. That's not it. That's not the limitation. There are still others. And someone in here said, Ricky, I disagree. Ricky. That was her husband. So I didn't take that as symbolism of choosing her own. And Barrett Crux adds that Omar Benson Miller said the addition of the Asian family was added by Coogler's wife. The family that screenwrites together stays together. So let's get some insight from you guys. So AJ86 said Community, an example of Community was in Stack teaching the young girl Smoke teaching the young girl how to wash the car and a quick lesson about money and negotiation. Agreed. There was a really dope quick exchange of financial education. Correct. Brandon McGrath says Community was also shown by the legacy of Stack and Smoke. Everyone knew who they were. Everyone knew who these brothers were, for good or for bad. Everyone knew who they were. Okay. Fatima said an example of Community was when Sammy first sings for the crowd and they realize the juke about to be lit. Now, I'm going to take you back even further when Sammy is in the field and someone asks him, you going to be singing that music tonight? Or do you know where you're going to be? Or am I going to have to find through the grapevine? And he won't say. He won't say. He won't say. Now, Sammy is our protagonist. Okay? Sammy is our protagonist, and he is he is really what this film is about. And he represents so much more than just an individual. But I feel like it's imperative to note that I could not find, I thought there would be like a bunch of pictures that I'd be able to find of him. I could not. But he's played by a young man who is making his film debut, and I just want to shout him out because I feel like he did a really great job. And when he begins in the film and he is talking to his father, his father says to him, like, I want you to leave that music alone. And he still heads out. He grabs his guitar and he heads out. Pretty Fly Dread said another example of Community is punishing our own after Smoke shot the guy stealing liquor, but then also provided money for recovery. I think this is a really interesting point because it was essentially community policing. It was essentially community policing, but also saying, I'm not going to kill you, but you're not going to try and steal my stuff. Laurel, your son is 14. There are some sex scenes, but it's not like nakedness. And I feel like the sex scenes are just kind of like they go along with the setting, like sex is happening in these settings. Now that for me takes us to the last element of the setting that I want to discuss, which is pastoral nature. What does nature represent to you all on screen? What does nature speak to when it is being used within story? Now, this film takes place in the Mississippi Delta. So we're going to see certain elements that may bring up feelings and triggers like cotton fields, like poplar trees. But ultimately, what I think Coogler did so well, and these are not images from the film, I just wanted to show you guys some images of the Mississippi Delta. What I think Coogler did so well is he grounded us in the nature. So you guys are giving me some great insights on what you see when nature is on screen. Reese says spiritual elevation. Stephen Okoa says grounded. Indy 6403 says freedom. Financial analyst says peace. Brandon says birth or the beginning. Patricia says hope. NG Elfrai, NG Elrafai, get it right, Amanda, said God, time, transformation. Abherent Crux said 30 seconds of stillness. Now, Jade Boyd adds something interesting here and says, sets the mood of what's to come. Interesting. For me, what I get when I see nature on screen in a deliberate way is I feel a simplicity that is being attached to the characters in the setting. Yes, LaKay, a natural order. Thank you. Y'all are so goddamn brilliant. Yes, a natural order. Mando B. Poetic says it speaks to an elemental constancy, which is cyclical. Renato, all the way down there in Brazil, says connection to all. Yes. All of these are imperative and are very clearly connected. Connected is not the word I was looking for. Are very clearly deliberate and intentional in this film. Connectivity is a theme we're going to see throughout the film. Okay? Robert Reed, you're behind. Connectivity is a theme that is connected throughout the film. And I really appreciated the effort to the cinematography because it made the nature a part of the film. And yes, Tiffany, tapping into a higher power, because as we know, one of the characters is a hoodoo mistress. And she works the root. Annie is in there showing you that classic working of the root. All right. And I loved the juxtaposition of the church as well as the mysticism, because the magic and the spirituality of Black folks is attached to both. And I really get annoyed and frustrated at the effort of the church to undermine mysticism and Black folk spirituality that is connected to the continent as witchery or as demonic, when it is literally what we are connected to and what we came from. And the original form of Christianity is from the continent. So it's all coming from the same land. So when I see Black people who are like spooked by the mention of the word witch, or who are spooked by the mention of casting spells, I'm like, where's your history? These are words that the same way CRT and woke have been completely bastardized and turned into pejoratives against us. That is the same way that words like voodoo, words like hoodoo, words like mysticism, words like magic, words like witch have also been flipped. And so it is imperative that we do the work of unflipping that. Also, like Renato adds, our spirituality is super connected to nature, and that is not simply a Black thing. The witches that were being burned at the stake, they were nature. They were natural in their ability to understand herbs. And because of this, they were able to fend off diseases that were plaguing, buzzword, their entire communities. They also had cats, and cats were fending off rodents. Rodents were also carrying diseases. And because of this, they were being seen as doing some sort of Black magic, because the church was saying, well, they over here being safe and trying to help people, and they're doing work that we can't do. So we got to get rid of them, or else people won't trust us. So when we continue to perpetuate this disconnection from Earth as a essential element of our spirituality, we are doing the work of our colonizer. We are doing the work of our oppressor. So in this film, the juxtaposition of mysticism as well as the organized church, and considering both of them as equally important, was not by accident. And I loved this. Now tell me, are y'all still with me? Are you bored? Do you want me to keep going? Let me know your thoughts. Give myself a brain break real quick. Before we get into this next section. All right, well, y'all are still with us. And you know who else is? Hi, my name is Jedi. I am a cat. I am a cat. All right. Let's get into our next section and let's talk about themes. What are themes, y'all? What are themes? Themes are messaging woven throughout a story that ties the overall vision together that the author or director is attempting to relay. Okay? And the themes of this film number in the many. But we're going to talk about just a few of the themes. Let me answer some questions real quick, though. So someone asked, I too have wanted to see this movie until I heard it was a horror film. Then someone said it's not too scary. Now I want to take my 13-year-old son. This film is not any more a horror film than the world we've been living in. If your son has the internet and has seen anything that's been going on in Palestine, this is light work. If your son has the internet and has seen the level of police brutality that continues to plague our communities, this is light work. The United States is a horror film. This is enlightenment. I believe that you need to go see it with him and provide him context. I don't know that he necessarily needs to see every element of the film. You may need to do some ear muffing. You may need to do some eye shading. But considering where we are and considering his generation, I think this is an incredible film to see with an adult who is going to help bring context. Okay. David Atkinson said, what did you think about white people using the N-word? As a Black person, I didn't get past the fact that it's white people using it. It takes place in Mississippi in 1932. Of course, white people are using the N-word. Are you talking about just in general or in the film? Because naturally they would be using the N-word. If they weren't using the N-word in the film, I would be like, what are we doing? You know, if you're going to do something in the past about the past, trying to adjust it for the present is doing a disservice. And what it also does is, again, does the work of those who are trying to commit erasure. Like, I know people felt some type of way about people using the N-word in the movie Django. Now, I feel some type of way about white folks using the N-word in Pulp Fiction because I don't think it's necessary. But in Django, yes, it is necessary. Absolutely. Now, somebody thought it was fun to say that's nice, and that's a nice and sweet way to put how witches and wizards use magic. I guess you've never been to Africa and had juju put on you. I want to make something explicitly clear that I think a lot of folks speak very confidently that actually reflects their ignorance. Everything has the capacity for good and bad. Everything has the capacity for shadow and light. The sun rises and the sun sets. So religion of any kind, as the saying goes, is good for good people and bad for bad people. No matter what practice you engage in, it is your value system that determines how you are able to wield those elements. It's like the false thought that physicians are inherently good people because they have the capability to save. And we have seen over and over and over and over and over again that ability used for villainy. So when you are suggesting that we only look at spirituality and mysticism from a negative context, you're really just being myopic and reductive and expressing loudly in the chat your own ignorance. Okay? So let's talk about themes. Okay, let's talk about themes. Yes, Jessica, as above, so below. Let's also just acknowledge that, like, within all of this, you're literally eating the blood of, you're drinking the blood of Christ and eating his body. Hello? Cut it out. So let's talk about some themes. Now, one of the themes, the theme that first stood out to me, just like glaring, was my brother's keeper. So the relationship between Smoke and Stack it's immediately identified as they are twins, but there's an intimacy between them that is just unquestionable, and that often is not, it's not shown between Black men without there being some inference to sexuality. And what I loved about it is that their intimacy was still very masculine, and it was still brotherhood. And they were shown sharing a cigarette immediately. And that, to me, was very, there was a lot of texture in that. There was a lot of and it also just showed, like, we know how to do this. We know how to film this. That was a show off scene. Like, look, they're the same person, but watch how we're going to do this. Oh, I know filming that had to be so annoying. Oh my God. When they separate, in the film. There is a desire, there's like a palpable fear that they have to separate. You know? I love what Renato said here. Sharing a cigarette means sharing the same breath. It means higher level of connection. Ooh. So when they are interacting with the white land seller, we are seeing them working together. I loved this as imagery of showing the necessity for us to be each other's keeper, watching each other's back, not allowing this person to have the upper hand. And there was a uniqueness to how this scene was shot that also depicted this white man as, you know, the pretense of him having respect for them. And he's asking them, what are they going to be doing at this venue? And they asked, did you wash this floor? And he asks that because he's asking if anyone has been killed in this place. And so they mention the Klan. And he says, oh, the Klan don't exist here anymore. The Klan don't exist here anymore. Which we all know is nonsense. But this My Brother's Keeper theme is really, really important and profound as it connects to the overall messaging of Black folks being immigrated into the burning house of an immoral, white-run America. And we'll talk more about that later. There was another theme in here that I found really interesting, and it was that love is really not available once the soul has crossed. It was like there was a constant reference, like what I did appreciate, there was so much mention of love. However, it was very much presented in like an unattainable way. It was as if love in this land is not able to be acquired. I saw this in the way that even the sex scenes played out. There was nothing soft about them. They all were very hurried. Or contextualized in deceit of some way. And I talk a lot about how, you know, white rom-coms are so I have a bit about this on stage when I'm doing stand-up about how like white rom-coms are just not like Black rom-coms, because Black rom-coms are always stories about loving in spite of. Like there's always like a target on our back, or there's a limitation that we're having to overcome, or like, you know, like Miss Bless 313, shout out to the D. There's always something like we're being rushed, like there isn't enough time. And that was something you don't see in white films. Their entire white movies, they're making an entire white movie about, does he like dogs? You've Got Mail He's in Seattle. Like, their reasons for not being in love are always so benign and innocuous. Whereas our reasons for not being able to be in love are like, he's in prison. He was wrongly convicted and he's in prison. So now my mama got to go to Puerto Rico. Like, what? What? He's at war. He's going to war. And now when he comes back, he's going to have been completely mentally disturbed and involve himself in robbing a bank. He's in a gang. He's in a gang. Or he shot up a convenience store. His boy shot up a convenience store and he was there. And then, look, you see what I'm saying? His brother's in a gang. Ricky! Like, it's always greater than we can overcome. When I have the time, I'm going to be writing work that identifies Black love beyond this. Now, this is a work that identifies Black love beyond this. And it is shown in the conversations that Smoke is having with his brother as well as with his cousin. It is shown in the protectiveness. It is shown in the community. It is demonstrated in the softness. It is demonstrated in between the couples. It is demonstrated in the forgiveness. It is demonstrated in the identifying of who is family and why. It's even demonstrated in the conversation that happens in the juke joint around money, which brings us to our next theme. Capitalist money may buy freedom, but it traps the soul. In the juke joint, there is a conversation around how money should be accepted within this space. I find myself in this current time and space having this, I had this same dance with capitalism. So here's Smoke and Stack. They go to Chicago and they get this money and they come back down here to Mississippi, where they're now going to be big fish in a small pond, and they open this juke joint. And they invite people into this juke joint. And the conversation that happens in the back room between Annie, Smoke, and Stack is, should we be accepting all forms of money or just particular forms of money? This is a greater commentary on our Black community. Now, in the beginning, where Annie is in her store, the children come and they bring her what I believe to be Confederate money. And Smoke comes in and is like, why are you taking that? You can't even spend that. And she's like, them children need this, and we gonna rock with it. Yes, Annie said we're socialists here. The children need this, and we're gonna rock with it. And Smoke is like, you need to get real money. And she's like, this money spends here. In this community, this money spends here. Now, something that's similar to this is what happens in Cuba. So in Cuba, there are two forms of money. There's the money that tourists spend, and then there's the money that the people spend between each other. And the two don't cross. The two don't cross. Now, when we see this in this context, it's essentially saying that there's like money between us, and then there's money between them. And at that point, Stack had went and got money between them. So when they're now back in the juke joint, and they're talking about who they should be taking money. A man had come to get a drink, and he only had 3 coins and 2 wooden nickels. And this is what was the catalyst for this conversation, because the wooden nickels are only able to be spent on the plantation where he works. Now, anybody who has read Parable of the Sower has heard of this concept where they stopped paying people in actual money and started only paying them in vouchers that they could spend on the actual land. So essentially, it meant that not only were you indebted to this land as sharecroppers, you now had to pay to get, you now also had to spend your money on this land. Yes, it's called plantation scrip. Thank you, Reese. And, we see similar things like this, exactly, TL, in company towns. Like these little campuses that these places be building. So this conversation, I don't want you to overlook it when you watch the film, because I feel like it can be seen as just kind of dynamic shifting, but it really is not just that. And yes, it is dynamic shifting because you need to have dynamics in film. It needs to rise and fall, right? However, it was a very necessary conversation for the greater theme, for the greater overall message of the immoral burning house and sinners as a cinematic depiction of the emulsion into that through symbolism and story, using Black music as the vessel. The concept of freedom and capitalist money buying freedom even comes into play later in the film, where a white man is being faced with life or death. And he says, I have money. And even though that white man was planning to take the lives of everyone there, he still offered up money, believing that it would save him. And he had every reason to believe that. He had every reason to believe that. Now, one of the other themes that is the most important theme is that Black American music is a supernatural portal to a diasporic past, present, and future. It cannot be understated the power and immensity of Black American music. I believe that this power and immensity comes from the fact that it is so imbued with so many things. It has struggle. It has all these various ethnicities and cultures. It has spirituality. It is supernatural. One of the most incredible scenes I've literally ever seen on film is in this movie. And it is worth noting that this scene was shot in a oneer. A oneer means it is a continuous shot with no cuts. And it took the crew months to organize the choreography of this. It was also shot on film in Steadicam, which is very difficult, very heavy. And the director of photography was a woman, and she wasn't white. The scene I'm referring to begins here with Sammy singing. And it expounds into images of Black music of the past, of the present, and of the future. It engages multiple forms of expression, of cultural reference. We see the dancers of Benin while also seeing Black ballet dancers, while also seeing break dancers. And it starts within the juke joint before the roof is removed, revealing the stars, revealing our ability to connect to where we're from, something supernatural. And I believe that power is so forgotten. I'm getting emotional. My graduate thesis, my undergraduate thesis at SUNY Purchase was called Musical People: How Black Music Moves the Black Experience. And it was a one-woman show that spoke about the juxtaposition of music coming out of particular Black experiences. So of spirituals coming out of the fields, of the blues coming out of Reconstruction and the turn of the century and the Depression, of soul coming out of war, post-war era, of hip hop coming out of the degradation of the slums and the introduction of crack and heroin to our Black neighborhoods. And that there is an intrinsic connection. And if I went back and expounded upon that, I would now also add in that intrinsic connection is also intrinsically connected to our African roots. And then something happens in the film. And this brings us to our next section. Symbols. When we talk about symbols, symbols are used to advance the story and the messaging in very clear, sometimes not so clear ways. They're meant to be markers on the pathway for the viewer. You know, kind of like GPS of how to get to where we're going. It was a very clear symbol to use vampires. Can anyone tell me what they think of when they think of vampires? What do you think of when you think of vampires? Because she makes a point, Annie makes a point of stating in the film, these aren't just hates. These are vampires. And then she delineates the difference. And she specifically says that hates are just evil. However, vampires are souls that are still living. They embody the person, whereas hates take over and replace a soul. She said vampires infect a soul, where the person is still there, but they are not able to see themselves anymore in their purest form, which allows them to cross over, where, as Hamid mentioned before, where love exists in a realm of our ancestors. She makes a point of this delineation because Coogler is a writer who's really not trying to have y'all miss it. That's why I get annoyed when y'all miss it. Hamid says vampires suck the life source and feed off of the life source of the very being of everything, culture, and all. Essentially, parasites. Celine 84 says vampires represent uncontrolled desires. Kishan says they use vampires and they use vultures. Yes. When we first meet the two white people in the shack and we first meet the vampire, there are 3 vultures perched on the roof of the shack. The shack sits in the middle of nowhere. There is a clan uniform made visible. And that clan uniform is what the vampire sees that lets him know he can continue to pursue these folks. He quickly invokes a lie about Native American people, that they hurt him, that they harmed him. This man who appeared out of nowhere in a flash of fire. And these white people believe him and they welcome him in. They welcome him in because he has said to them Injuns harm me. And when he is welcomed in, he is now allowed to start his bidding. By turning those people into vampires. Mike D. Bradley, vampires represent indoctrination. Fahad says vampires are about stealing and siphoning the most important resource, which is their soul. That's what colonialism has been doing with sucking the soul of these different communities and resources. Exactly. Which brings us back to the overarching theme, the burning house. In this film, the vampires are constantly presenting a message of love and togetherness. They are constantly preaching a message of we are one. We are together. Note that the Native Americans come back and tell these white people, that man ain't what you think he is. And they're like, we're fine. We're fine. Now, anybody who has watched any Vampire Fair or any True Blood knows that, like Mando Be Poetic says, vampires must be welcomed in. It's important that we understand why Coogler used this particular symbolism. Because every time we talk about they're invited to the barbecue, we are welcoming a vampire in if we're not careful. Every time we talk about I'm a Democrat, we're welcoming the vampire in. And in this context, the idea is that by selling peace and togetherness and love, that we will welcome the vampire in because we want that so badly. We want peace, togetherness, and love. But what we are failing to recognize and what Coogler is trying to tell us is that we already have it amongst each other. We already have it. And this vampire shows up and sees the beauty and the love and the peace and the joy that is taking place in that juke joint with a preacher boy's son on the guitar. And you know what he sees? A burning house. That's what he sees. He sees the burning house. He sees the opportunity to emulsify these people in the immorality of colonialism and capitalism. He sees all of that greatness, all of that authentic and deeply rooted in organic joy, and sees destruction. And then they proceed to attempt to be welcomed in with deception, with kindness as deception. How many times do we see kindness as deception? Dylan Roof was welcomed into that church. He prayed with those people. And then he took their lives in the name of the God they were praying to. When I do my Smart, Funny, and Black shows, I actually make sure that everybody turns to each other and acknowledges each other and says their name and personalizes each other. This is community. This is space. In the beginning of the night, they are banded together saying, no, we're not going to let y'all in. But it is the desire for money that eventually allows for the beginning, for the first domino to fall, so to speak. And a theme, a symbol that is used is the white woman as the temptress, aka the devil. Now, in the work of the Black arts movement of the late 60s and early 70s, we saw this as a common theme. The white woman as the Jezebel, so to speak, in counter to the Black woman imagery of the Jezebel. Haley Stanfield plays the role of Grace, aptly named. She is considered what's called an octoroon, in that her grandfather is half Black. But she's grown up with these people in their community. Annie considers her family. She wants to be with Smoke, but Smoke is like, nah, I don't want to be with you because I want to keep you safe. Oh, her name is Mary. Sorry, her name is Mary, which is also apt. I want to keep you safe. Yeah, Grace is the Asian woman who is the shop owner. So like we see these professions of love throughout the film, but it's always, again, within this context of pain. So Haley talks about, yes, Reese, Haley is passing. And there's a mention of the fact that she has been brought up to pass, but that she does not want to pass. Now, she heads out to go talk to the vampires because she's like, well, you know, I got more of them, more of the whiteness in me. I can maybe flip this. And so she does this to try to impress Stack. This image of the white woman trying to impress the Black man and then causing harm, we've seen this so many goddamn times. Amira Baraka uses this image famously in The Dutchman, but it is allegory. And this carries out in such a obvious way. She is welcomed back in without any question and proceeds to wreak havoc because she was welcomed in. She was trusted. And it's not about her being white that makes her not worthy of being trusted. It's about her using her whiteness to interact with the devil and bringing it back in. That was what allowed for the havoc. Okay? Now, there are many more symbols in this film. We only going to talk about 2 more of them. And one of them is the snake in the truck. Let's talk about the snake in the truck, the serpent. Now, there is a scene in the beginning of the film where the twins go in some bushes and they uncover a truck that they've hidden in the bushes for the purpose of utilizing the liquor that they have stolen from up north to give, or should I say, to serve at the juke joint. Now, when they open up this stuff and Sammy offers to help because he'd been raised up, not dragged up, he ends up almost getting struck by a snake. The snake was immediately stabbed in the neck by Smoke. That's right, Stephanie Smith. Smoke stabs the snake in the neck. What does the snake represent? Well, let's take it back to biblical, because we started at biblical with him in the church, with Sammy in the church with his father, and his father telling him, don't go over there because that's where them sinners are. The snake in the Bible represents temptation, duplicity, trickery, and sin. It's deception. And its deception is promoting as good what is actually evil. So Sammy stands there frightened. And Smoke tells him, leave this to us. Leave the truck to us. I love what Sound said right here. By nature, the snake will bite. You don't negotiate or wonder if it's a good snake. I think what's also worth noting here, though, is the symbolism of the snake guarding what's considered to be sin on a number of levels. It's alcohol, it's stolen, it's going to be going to the juke joint. And Sammy is still considered pure. And Smoke is like, I'm really not trying to let you go into what we're going into, because once you're in it, you won't be able to get out. To Sammy, to Smoke, him and Stack, they're already gone. They went to war. They were trained by these white men to kill. So they were also working with Capone, killing for those white men. And now they're home. And Smoke is trying to keep Sammy from being bit in what Sammy feels like is the Garden of Eden. Because anything could happen. The last symbol I want to acknowledge as we're on the biblical track is water. Water. There is a scene in the film where there is a culmination And Sammy and Smoke find themselves being pursued by vampires. I'm not going to tell you who's a vampire and who's not. But in being pursued, they find themselves in water. And in this water, I believe we're seeing the image of baptism. That's what I believe we're seeing. Water as cleansing. Because notice, only one vampire makes it into the water. And he says a speech in this water. He says a speech in this water that is eerie, but that is clear. And again, it's because Coogler don't want you to not understand. And he says in an Irish accent, you could join us. You could agree with us. You could come and be a part of us. They came for my people, and we joined them. And that, to me, was commentary on how the Irish were once considered the second to the lowest form of the social status calendar. But as white supremacy expanded, it found itself going to the Irish and welcoming them in if they were willing to harm Black people. It allowed them access to whiteness if they were willing to be slave catchers. That is why so many Irish people are a part of the police force. What he's also referencing is that Ireland was colonized for 700 years. 700 years by the British. They're still there in Northern Ireland. They tried to take their language. They tried to kill their culture. They tried to starve their people. There wasn't a potato. Excuse me. It wasn't that there was just a potato famine. No, the potato famine was planned and their other crops were ruined. And they were forced to have to depend on the British for crops. It's the exact same methodology as killing all the frickin' bison and damming the rivers of the Native Americans. Why do you think Ireland is so staunchly in support of Palestine? Shout out to Kneecap. We, I believe, are witnessing the expansion of white supremacy to the Zionists right now. And they have been trained. They have been trained to willingly subvert everybody else for the upholdment of supremacy. And they are actively in pursuit of Black people to continue in this effort. You see people like Cory Booker out there teaching AIPAC how to pursue and how to recruit Black politicians. I saw them doing a Zionist presentation at Morehouse the other day. Shout out to the students at Howard University that began an encampment. You saw them saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe we were supporting you in BLM and now you're not supporting us in this. That means that there was strategy behind that. You weren't really in support of Black Lives Matter. So you were supporting Black people being harmed and genocided by a police force that is trained by the IDF and that always seems to garner immunity. And now you don't understand why folks aren't supporting that same IDF being given the immunity to unleash a genocide? Reese said something earlier about the water, which I think is really important to note. He said, I thought the water sequence was very important and also showed radically to a degree the powerlessness of Christianity and instead the powerfulness of pagan spirituality. I think it really did both. You know, he's like reading the Lord's Prayer, and you have this vampire making this great claim of you can be a part of peacefulness and safety if you just come join us. If you just come join us. And it's tempting, right? But it ain't real. And that was what they were saying about how vampires are souls that are never at peace. It's tempting, but it ain't real. Which brings us to the takeaways from this incredible piece of work by Ryan Coogler. At the end of this movie, I sat in that theater and I was so deeply moved. I craned my neck around and looked around to see who was in there. To ask myself, is it necessary, Amanda, what you feel like you need to do? Is it necessary? Yes, I felt it was. This is me in the theater. This movie is about the American lie. Wake up and come together, y'all. That's what this movie is trying to teach us. I meant every word. I meant every word. And I could not believe it when I got home and I saw this comment on my YouTube. Hold on one second. I saw this comment on my YouTube and I said, you know what? You never know who's watching. Hi, Amanda. I wanted to thank you for your message at the end of the movie. My daughter was sitting next to you. She said you were fun to sit next to and made her comfortable being animated in the theater too. Your comments started a really good discussion for us at dinner. At dinner after. Love your work. Oh, that's you, Golden Woman. Love your work and love that this was the way my youngest was introduced to who you were. I was so impacted. I was so deeply impacted. And the movie, ultimately, I'm not going to tell you what the final scene in the movie is, but there is a scene in the movie where Sammy he tells his father, I can't let go of the music. I cannot let go of the music. And we see literally and figuratively that it is the music that saves us. And I want to just point out that music, in the literal form is imperative. I just feel like this can also extend to just Black art forms. The music can't be discarded. It is what saves us. It is what saves us. And the last line of the film is this. Sammy says, before all of that happened, that was the best day of my life. Was it like that for you? And Stack responds, no doubt about it. Last time I seen my brother, last time I seen the sun, just for a few hours I was free. AmandaLand.
PSA.
The last time that I saw a film that impacted me in this way was when I saw 12 Years a Slave. At the time of seeing 12 Years a Slave, I was at a real crossroads in my life. I had I understood that I needed to leave hip hop because it no longer spoke my values. It no longer spoke my voice. And I knew that I needed to carve a path for me to be able to attend to a stronger messaging. And the people that I was talking to about this kept telling me things like, you need to become that girl. You need to get you need to get the white girls on your side. You need to get the gays on your side. Like this type of like marketing myself as a brand, so to speak. And I found myself just confounded with where to go and what to do and how. And I remember going to see the film and stepping outside after and being so deeply shaken. But I stood on that street corner at Lincoln Center and I said, you know, you're going to be as black as you want to be. That's what you're going to do. You're going to be as black as you want to be and as black as you need to be. And any space that does not allow for that is a space that you don't need to be in. And I let that be my guide. I've let that be my guide for the past 21 years. I mean, for the past 11, 12 years. And right now, I am at yet another crossroads where I have left the film and entertainment industry. I'm not doing stand-up. And I see for myself a path forward that is completely and solely dedicated to educating. However, I find myself having to become even more specific. And as I watch the dedication to erasure on multiple levels of this particular government and of alt-right and right-wing fascists across this country, across this world, I ask myself, are we worth saving? Not just the United States, but Black identity, Black culture. And I think that Coogler is answering that in this film. I think Coogler is saying it's not even a question. He's saying that we should stop not identifying that for ourselves. He's saying that we are constantly killing ourselves and literally selling our souls into the burning house, believing the falsehood that what is being offered in money and access is more valuable than what we are able to protect with family and community and preservation of our own. His deal speaks to that. His deal that he signed speaks to that. This will revert back to my family. I need last credit. I need last edit, which is essentially creative independence. I myself understand that I am not going to leave, at least not yet, in the midst of this descent. And that as much as the effort to erase will continue, I have committed myself, and this movie only further cemented that conviction. I have committed myself to being a part of the work of preserving and protecting not just Black American culture, but Black American identity. The archivists are doing it. The intellectuals and academics are doing it. Artists are doing it. And I seek to do it in all of those ways. If anybody knows, y'all know I'm an archivist. I got stuff from forever and wherever. And so I had found myself kind of in this, like, is this enough moment? And seeing this film not only affirmed for me that it's enough, but it implored me to know that even if right now there are people who may not see the value in that work, you, Amanda, are a seer. You have always seen things before they happen because you've been here before, because you have pattern recognition, because you are tapped into this mycelium. And so you know what is needed before some even know that they need it. And we will need frameworks and guidebooks to identify where we're going by remembering where we've been and where we are. And so thank you to Ryan Coogler for this piece of work and for speaking to this fellow visionary and helping to provide not simply just guidance, but affirmation that we did not inherit freedom. We inherited a fight for freedom. PSA. Hey! I hope y'all enjoyed this. Our 2.5-hour lecture on the film Sinners by Ryan Coogler. Thank you to everybody who dropped a super in the chat. Thank you for supporting this work and for supporting my work. It is much appreciated. If anybody knows Ryan Coogler, please, I hope that you will send this to him. I hope you will alert him of this. I would love the opportunity to speak to Ryan Coogler. And I also am I just deeply believe that artists who are on the same page and of the same high vibration it's essential that we understand each other and connect to each other. And for those who ask all the time, like, Amanda, would you ever go back to acting? I found my answer. I would go back to acting were it to be with Ryan Coogler. Okay. That is what would get me back to acting on the stage and screen. All right. So thank you, everybody, once again, for being a supporter of this channel, for supporting my work and supporting work like Sinners. You know, the way that films like this get made is because we make it impossible for them to deny. And that's really the conversation. The capitalism lives by the dollar and it will die by the dollar. And I have never felt more compelled to live in that assertion as I did after watching this freaking movie. So Reese approves. Y'all go out and support Sinners in theaters now. And please remember that we are each other's business. When we look out for each other, we lift each other up. I will see y'all here tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern, at Views from AmandaLand. 30 seconds of stillness. I enjoyed laughing and learning with you. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And tell your friends. Also, listen to the podcast. It's available everywhere pods are casted. Listen ad-free by subscribing to Patreon Amanda Seals. Come on and join the Seals Squad. Views from AmandaLand. Live 10 a.m. Eastern, Monday through Wednesday, with content on Thursday and Friday at YouTube Amanda Seals TV.
Smart, funny, and